Hey everyone, and welcome back to Wired to Win. I'm your host, Layan. Today's episode is going to challenge the way you think about money, not just how to earn it or spend it, but how you feel about it. Because here's the truth, money is never just numbers. It's deeply personal, it's emotional, and most of us are making financial decisions based on stories, fears, and beliefs we don't even realize we carry. Why do some people live paycheck to paycheck while earning six figures? Why do others quietly build wealth without ever flashing it? And why does freedom, not luxury, turn out to be the real definition of success? In this episode, we'll unpack the surprising psychology behind your relationship with money, how patience, frugality, and long-term thinking can do more for your future than any risky shortcut ever could. If you've ever felt anxious about finances, stuck in comparison, or unsure how to build something lasting, this one's for you. Let's break the myths, reset the mindset, and step into a healthier, wiser relationship with money. This is Wired to Win. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to sift through a stack of interesting sources and pull out the key insights for you. You know, we often think doing well with money is all about being smart, right?
Yeah.
Like you need a PhD in finance.
That's the common idea, definitely, that clever people make clever money moves. But, well, what if it's not really about brains at all? What if it's more about behavior?
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today, the really fascinating psychology of money. We're going to explore why our feelings, our own past experiences, our perspectives, why all that shapes our financial lives so much more than we think.
Yeah, and our mission here is to extract the most important, actionable ideas from all this material we've looked at.
Right. To help you get better informed, maybe make financial decisions with a bit more confidence. So let's kick off with this core idea. Financial success, maybe surprisingly, seems to have very little connection to how smart you are, and a huge amount to do with how you behave.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing the research points out is that behavior, it's really tough to teach, even to geniuses.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because we default to thinking finances are logical, almost like math. But the evidence keeps pointing back to behavior again and again.
Yeah.
And the sources, they give us some incredibly vivid examples of this, really stark contrasts.
Oh, they really do. Take this one story about a tech executive. Certified genius, apparently. Designed a key Wi-Fi part in his 20s. Made millions selling companies.
Yeah.
You'd think, okay, he's set.
Right. Financial genius equals financial security.
You'd think.
Yeah.
But his relationship with money was described as, well, childishly stupid.
Okay.
Carrying huge wads of cash, bragging.
Oh,
There's this crazy story where he gets a valet to buy $1,000 gold coins
I remember reading this one.
and then skips him into the ocean.
Yeah.
Like rocks, just for fun.
Yeah.
Another time, smashes a lamp in a hotel, gets asked for $500, throws $5,000 at the manager and tells him to get out of his face. Just,
And the predictable outcome.
predictable indeed.
Yeah.
Went broke. Didn't last long, as the material says.
Now, contrast that with Ronald Reed, the janitor and gas station attendant from Vermont.
Such a different story.
Totally different. Humble background. First in his family to finish high school. Fixed cars for 25 years. Swept floors for 17.
Yeah.
Lived in the same modest house his whole life.
And when he passed away?
Died at 92 with over $8 million. Left most of it, $6 million, to his local hospital and library.
People couldn't figure it out, right? How did
Yeah.
a janitor do that?
Exactly. No lottery win, no big inheritance.
Yeah.
He just saved what little he could, put it in blue chip stocks, and waited for decades. That's literally it.
Patience.
Yeah.
Just incredible patience.
Yeah.
And then you have someone like Richard Fuscone.
Right. The opposite end of the spectrum. Harvard MBA, top Merrill Lynch executive, retired early, a super successful career.
Should have known better, you'd think.
You would. But in the mid-2000s, he borrowed massively to expand this enormous house, 18,000 square feet, 11 bathrooms, pools, elevators, costing like $90,000 a month just to maintain.
Insane.
Then 2008 hit. And despite the fancy education, the experience, bankrupt. House sold for a fraction of its worth.
So, Ronald Reed, patient. Richard Fuscone, greedy.
That's the core difference, isn't it? And that behavioral gap just completely overshadowed the massive differences in education and experience.
It really makes you think, where else does a janitor financially outperform a Harvard exec by such a margin?
Exactly. It underscores that finance isn't purely a hard science. It's a soft skill. It's about behavior.
Which brings us neatly to this other concept from the sources that I found really compelling. No one's crazy.
Yes, I love this idea.
It sort of reframes how we look at people's financial choices. Right?
Yeah.
What does it really mean?
Well, basically it means that even if someone's money decisions look totally irrational to you, they aren't actually crazy.
Okay.
People make decisions based on their own unique view of how money works. And that view is deeply shaped by their personal life experiences.
So it's subjective.
Completely. Think about all the things that shape us. The generation we grew up in, our parents' attitudes, our income level, our values, the economy we experienced, the job market, even just plain luck. So what seems bonkers to you might make total sense to someone who's lived a completely different life.
Like the example they give, someone who grew up poor versus the child of a wealthy banker. Their whole approach to risk is going to be worlds apart.
Absolutely. Fundamentally different perspectives. Almost impossible for one to truly understand the other's gut feelings about money.
And it's not just about wealth levels, is it? The material points out how experiencing high inflation, like back in the 60s,
Right.
gives you a totally different feel for money's stability compared to someone who grew up when prices were stable, like the 90s.
That's a great point. It affects your intuition. Even JFK, from one of America's richest families, admitted he didn't really get the Great Depression firsthand.
You read about it at Harvard, apparently.
Exactly. He read about it. But reading about losing everything isn't the same as living through it. You don't get the emotional scars, the deep-seated fear and uncertainty, just from a textbook. Our own experiences just carry so much more weight in shaping our beliefs than anything we learn secondhand.
That really helps explain things like, well, the lottery ticket thing.
Ah, yes, the paradox.
Lower-income households spend way more on lottery tickets, right? Like $400 a year on average. Often the same people who couldn't cover a $400 emergency.
And from the outside, you think, that's crazy. Why gamble away your safety net?
Right. It seems totally irrational.
But if you try to see it from their angle, maybe saving feels impossible. Maybe big wage increases seem out of reach. They might feel they'll never afford the nice stuff. Vacations, new cars, maybe even good health care.
So the lottery ticket is what?
It might be the only way they feel they can hold on to a tangible dream, a tiny shot at getting the good stuff that maybe wealthier people take for granted. They're buying hope, not just a ticket.
No. That does put a different spin on it. It really challenges your assumptions.
It does. The key takeaway is that every financial decision makes sense to the person making it at that moment. It's all filtered through their unique life story.
Okay, so our personal history shapes our financial worldview profoundly. But what about other forces, things we don't see? That brings us to luck, risk, and this idea of tails.
Right, because every outcome isn't just about our effort, is it? There are always external forces at play. Luck and risk are like siblings, constantly influencing things.
Hard to measure, hard to accept sometimes.
Definitely. But crucial to acknowledge, it ties into that idea that nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems.
How so?
Well, the sources use the story of Bill Gates and his high school friend, Ken Evans. Gates had this incredible luck, 1 in a million, they call it.
Attending Lakeside School in '68.
Exactly. One of the only high schoolers anywhere with an advanced computer back then. Most universities didn't have that kind of tech.
Amazing luck.
But then there's Ken Evans, just as smart, just as ambitious as Gates. They were planning big things together.
And then tragedy struck.
Yeah. Died in a mountaineering accident before they even graduated. A 1 in a million risk. A terrible turn of events.
So the same force randomness, luck working in completely opposite ways.
Precisely. One path leads to Microsoft, the other is cut short. It shows success isn't purely skill, and failure isn't purely mistakes. The world's just too complex for our actions alone to determine everything.
That also makes you think about that fine line between being seen as bold versus reckless, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We look back at figures like Vanderbilt or Rockefeller who kind of thumbed their noses at the rules.
Right. Vanderbilt saying you can't run a railroad following New York state laws.
And because they succeeded, we often call it cunning or visionary in hindsight.
But if they'd failed,
they'd just be criminals, right?
Yeah.
Outlaws whose businesses collapsed. The line is so thin and often only visible looking back, especially when luck plays a part.
Even Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing.
Buffett's mentor, yeah.
His single biggest win came from a huge bet on Geico stock, which actually broke his own rules about diversification.
And he even questioned it himself. Was it a lucky break or a supremely shrewd decision? It's hard to tell them apart sometimes.
Which leads us to this concept of tails you win. What's that about?
It's the idea that in many areas, especially finance, a tiny number of events drive the vast majority of the results. The tails, the extreme outliers have all the impact.
Meaning you can be wrong a lot.
Most of the time, even. And still come out way ahead if you have one or two massive winners. Think about that art dealer, Heinz Berggruen.
Fled Nazi Germany.
That's him. Apparently, 99% of the art he bought ended up being pretty worthless.
Wow.
But the remaining 1%, masterpieces, Picassos and the like, that tiny fraction made his entire fortune. He was mostly wrong, but ultimately incredibly right.
Or Disney.
Great example. Made hundreds of cartoons, most lost money, but then came Snow White.
Changed everything.
Totally. Paid off all their bets, set the studio's future. Those 83 minutes of film were the tail that wagged the dog.
I see it in venture capital too, right?
Absolutely. Most VC investments fail or barely break even. Maybe 65% lose money, but a tiny fraction, like 0.5%, return 50x or more. Those huge wins pay for all the losses and drive the whole industry.
And the stock market itself.
Same principle. A handful of huge winners, your Amazons, your Apples, account for a massive chunk of the overall market returns over time.
So for us as individuals trying to manage our money, what's the takeaway from these tales?
It really highlights how crucial your behavior is during those few really critical moments. Your long-term success probably depends less on the years things are just cruising along, and much more on how you react during those punctuated moments of terror. You know, the big market crashes like late 08, early 09.
Keeping your cool, then, is key.
Massively key. The research suggests that just handling those relatively few really bad months, maybe 20-25% of the time during recessions without panicking, can make a huge difference to your long-term wealth. It's about surviving the outliers.
Which ties into the idea of compounding, doesn't it? Survives long enough for it to work. But compounding itself is, well, it's kind of hard to grasp intuitively.
It really is confounding. Our brains are wired for linear thinking. Add this, add that, not exponential growth. Multiply this, multiply that.
Right.
The sources use that great ice age analogy. It wasn't some massive sudden force. It was just a tiny a little bit of snow not melting over the summer.
Compounding year after year.
Exactly. Until you get these logic-defying results. Miles-thick ice sheets covering continents. Small changes accumulating over time, leading to massive outcomes.
So the lesson is, you don't need huge force for huge results.
Not if you have compounding in time. Look at Warren Buffett. People write thousands of books trying to dissect his genius.
Yeah, the secret formula.
But they often miss the simplest, most powerful factor. He hasn't just been a good investor. He's been a good investor since he was a kid.
Time factor.
Over 70 years of it. That's the real magic. His compounding runway is enormous.
It's striking when you compare him to someone like Jim Simons from Renaissance Technologies.
Right. Simons has achieved way higher annual returns, like 66% versus Buffett's 22%. Phenomenal.
Buffett is much wealthier.
Vastly wealthier. Why? Because Buffett had more than double the number of years for that 22% to compound. Time is the most powerful force in investing.
Our intuition just struggles with that exponential leap. 8 plus 8 plus 8 is easy. 8 times 8 times 8. Our brains kind of short circuit.
They do. And that intuition gap is probably why we often overlook compounding's power. We chase complexity. We look for shortcuts. Instead of just letting pretty good returns work for a really, really long time. The sources joke that the best investing book might just be titled, Shut Up and Wait.
Huh. I like that.
Good investing isn't necessarily about hitting home runs all the time. Those are hard to repeat. It's about getting decent returns you can stick with consistently, year after year, decade after decade. That's when compounding does its incredible work.
But there's always a but, isn't there? Nothing worthwhile is free.
Never free. And the sources make this point really clearly. Every financial gain worth having comes with a price tag.
And it's not just dollars.
No, often the real price is invisible until you're paying it. For investing, the price isn't just fees, it's dealing with volatility. It's wrestling with fear, with doubt, with uncertainty, with regret when things go down.
Things that are easy to ignore when markets are only going up.
Exactly. The analogy used is like paying for a ticket to Disneyland. It costs, say, $100, but you get this amazing day out. You don't see that $100 as a fine or a punishment.
No, it's the price of admission.
It's the fee for something awesome. The danger in investing comes when you try to get the awesome returns without being willing to pay that price, the volatility and fear price.
Like trying to time the market perfectly. Jump in, jump out.
Precisely. Those tactical funds that try to dodge the downturns, Study after study shows it rarely works reliably. You often end up worse off than just staying put and enduring the ride.
So the key insight for you, the listener, is to reframe that market turbulence.
Yes. Try to see volatility not as a penalty for doing something wrong, but as a fee. The necessary price you pay for the potential of long-term growth, which historically has been very rewarding.
Accept the fee, endure the ride.
Because market returns are never free, and they never will be. You have to earn them, partly by paying that psychological price.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. One of the biggest psychological traps with money seems to be this feeling of, well, never having enough.
The moving goalpost problem. It's huge.
The sources tell that great story about Joseph Heller, author of Catch-22.
At the party with the billionaire.
Yeah. And Heller says to Kurt Vonnegut, pointing at the billionaire, "I have something he will never have." Vonnegut asks what? Heller replies, "Enough."
Chills. That one word, enough, is so loaded and so hard for many people to find.
We see the extreme examples, right? Rajat Gupta, Bernie Madoff.
Already incredibly wealthy, Gupta worth $100 million, Madoff built this huge empire.
But it wasn't enough?
Nope. They risked everything, their freedom, their reputation, everything they did have and need for more money they didn't have and didn't need. It led them to prison.
And it's not just outright criminals. Think about long-term capital management.
Oh yeah, the hedge fund staffed with Nobel laureates and Wall Street geniuses, personally worth millions, hundreds of millions.
And they blew up spectacularly.
In 1998, during a massive bull market, because they took insane risks chasing even more. As Buffett said about them, it was just foolish, risking what's important for something that isn't.
So the hardest financial skill might just be stopping that goalpost from constantly moving further away.
It really might be, because if your expectations just ratchet up every time you achieve something, you never actually feel better off. You're always chasing the next level.
And social comparison pours fuel on that fire.
Well, big time. That's the core engine driving it. You know, the baseball player making $500K a year feels broke compared to Mike Trout's $430 million contract.
Even though $500 is objectively rich.
Exactly. But the ceiling for comparison is literally infinite. There's always someone with more. So it's a game you fundamentally cannot win by playing it.
The only way to win is
to opt out, to decide for yourself what enough looks like, even if people around you seem to have way more.
That ties into another really interesting idea. The man in the car paradox.
Yes. Explain that one.
Well, you see someone driving a really flashy car, like a Ferrari, and your first thought isn't usually, wow, the driver of that car must be really cool.
No. What do you think?
You think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool.
That's the paradox. You want the wealth to signal to others that you deserve admiration, but those other people mostly just see the car and use it as a benchmark for their own desires. They skip right over admiring you.
So the fancy stuff doesn't actually buy the respect you think it will?
Not really. The sources argue pretty strongly that things like humility, kindness, empathy, those generate far more genuine respect than horsepower or designer labels ever will.
And this connects to the idea that real wealth, well, it's often invisible.
Crucial distinction. Rich is current income, often displayed through spending. Fancy cars, big houses, that's visible.
But wealth?
Wealth is what's not spent. It's the income saved and invested, the financial assets that haven't been turned into flashy stuff. It's hidden.
Like that story of the valet parking attendant in Roger.
Yeah, Roger always shows up in a Porsche, looks super rich. Then one day he's in an old Honda. Turns out the Porsche was repossessed.
Appearances can be deceiving.
Very deceiving. It highlights the paradox. When people say, I want to be a millionaire, what they often picture is, I want to spend $1 million.
Which is the exact opposite of being a millionaire.
Exactly. Spending it makes you not a millionaire anymore. The real challenge is it's easy to find role models for being rich because you can see their spending.
But wealthy role models?
Much harder to find because wealth is quiet. It's invisible savings and investments. This makes learning how to build wealth quite difficult because the process isn't flashy.
So if wealth is hidden and built through not spending, that brings us squarely to the power of saving.
The absolute bedrock. The sources are emphatic. Building wealth is less about how much you earn or even your investment returns.
And more about what?
Your savings rate. How much you save out of what you earn. That's the variable you have the most control over.
They use that energy crisis analogy from the 70s.
Right. We didn't just solve it by finding more oil. A huge part was becoming more energy efficient, just using less.
So with money, it's about lowering your needs.
Exactly. Increasing your savings rate by decreasing what you feel you need to spend is often way more effective and more reliable than trying to chase higher and higher investment returns.
And the benefit of saving goes beyond just hitting specific goals, like buying a house or retiring.
Oh, absolutely. Saving just for the sake of saving, building that buffer, gives you something incredibly valuable. Options, flexibility, control over your own time.
That's the unseen return they talk about.
Precisely. The ability to say no to a bad job, to take time off, to change careers, to handle unexpected events without stress. That ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want.
That's the highest dividend money pays.
That's what the material argues, and it's compelling. It's a universal fuel for happiness. Think of Rockefeller having a thinking job versus manual laborers back then. The difference in time control was immense.
And there's an ego check involved here, too.
Definitely. Past a certain level of income, a lot of spending isn't about need, it's about ego. It's about status.
And people who build lasting wealth.
They often just don't give a damn what others think about them, as the sources put it. They prioritize future freedom over present flash.
So the message is save. Save for predictable things, yes, but also save just to save, as a buffer against life's inevitable curveballs.
Those field mice, the little unexpected problems that can derail everything if you're not prepared. Savings are your defense against them.
Okay, so if behavior, experience, and saving are so central, how should we actually approach making financial decisions day to day?
Well, one really important piece of advice from the sources is aim to be reasonable, not necessarily purely rational.
Reasonable versus rational, what's the difference?
Rational implies cold, hard logic, mathematical optimization. Reasonable is more human. It acknowledges emotions, comfort levels, the need to sleep at night. And importantly, reasonable is something you're much more likely to stick with long term.
And sticking with it is key for compounding.
Exactly. The analogy they use is about fevers. Rationally, biologically, a fever helps fight infection.
Right, it has a purpose.
But it feels awful. So, reasonably, we take medicine to bring the fever down because being miserable isn't sustainable. We prioritize what's tolerable.
That makes sense. Like Harry Markowitz, the Nobel Prize winner for portfolio optimization.
The guy who literally wrote the book on rational portfolio theory.
He didn't optimize his own portfolio for maximum theoretical return. He split it 50-50 between stocks and bonds, simply to minimize future regret.
He was being reasonable. He wanted a strategy he could live with emotionally, not just one that looked best on paper.
And the idea is, if you can find a strategy you feel good about, maybe even one you love,
you're far more likely to stick with it through thick and thin. And that endurance through the tough times is what ultimately drives long-term success. Being reasonable helps you stay the course.
But the course itself,
yeah,
it's not predictable, is it? That leads to the next big point, surprise.
Yeah. History is not a reliable map of the future. That quote really hits home. Things that have never happened before happen all the time.
So looking back at past market performance doesn't guarantee future results.
It helps set expectations, gives you context, but it's definitely not a perfect guide, especially in finance, where innovation, new products, and human psychology are constantly changing the rules of the game.
Think about the biggest events that shaped the last century. The Great Depression, World War II, 9/11.
Were any of them predictable? Not really. But these massive, unforeseen outlier events are what truly drive economic and market shifts for decades afterward.
The sources trace that line from 9/11 to Fed rate cuts, the housing bubble, the '08 crisis, a tough job market leading to more people taking student loans. It's a chain reaction.
Exactly. Seemingly isolated, unpredictable events have these huge, cascading, long-term consequences that you just couldn't map out in advance.
And the financial world itself changes structurally, too.
Constantly. The 401k is still relatively new, Roth IRAs even newer. The specific investment formulas Benjamin Graham used back in his day, they became outdated because the market structure changed.
So when we study financial history,
the lessons should probably be more general the further back you go. Focus on timeless human behaviors. Greed, fear, panic, euphoria, those persist. But specific strategies, trends, market conditions, they evolve. The world is fundamentally surprising.
Given that surprise is inevitable, how do we prepare? This brings us to room for error.
Or margin of safety. Absolutely critical. It means you have to plan for your plan not working out perfectly.
Because it probably won't.
Something will go wrong. You need buffer. Even in blackjack, if you're counting cards and have a statistical edge, you still need enough capital to ride out streaks of bad luck. You can't bet the farm on any single hand.
And we see this in how successful people operate.
Definitely. Bill Gates famously kept enough cash at Microsoft to run the company for a year with zero revenue, just in case.
Wow. Peace of mind.
Warren Buffett explicitly prioritizes having ample cash, saying he won't trade a good night's sleep for extra potential profit. They build in that margin of safety. They want to be financially unbreakable.
To survive the unexpected, like those field mice in the German tanks.
Right. The tiny, unforeseen problems that cause catastrophic failures. You can plan for the obvious risks, but the really damaging stuff is often the thing you never saw coming. Having room for error protects you from those single points of failure.
So room for error isn't just about being conservative, it's about endurance.
It's the key to endurance. It lets you survive the unexpected downturns, the personal setbacks, the market surprises, so you can stay in the game long enough for compounding to do its magic. Being unbreakable is paramount.
But there's one more surprise we need to account for, isn't there?
And it's us.
The final piece. You'll change. The research is clear. We are terrible at predicting our future selves. A end of history illusion.
That's it. We tend to think the person we are now is the person we'll always be. But we consistently underestimate how much our personalities, our goals, our desires will shift over time.
How does that impact financial planning? If we're planning for a future self who might want totally different things.
It makes long-term planning really tricky. Think about extreme plans. Someone living incredibly frugally now, saving 80% of their income, might regret missing out on experiences later. Someone working 100-hour weeks for extreme luxury might later wish they'd had more time.
Because their future self adapts, but the downsides remain.
Potentially. The risk of regret is high with extreme approaches.
So this suggested strategy for endurance, considering we change.
Avoid extremes. Aim for balance across your life. Moderate savings rate, ensuring you still have free time, a reasonable commute, time with family. A balanced approach increases the odds you'll stick with the plan and minimize future regret as your priorities evolve.
And if you look back and realize a past financial goal was made by a different you,
abandon it without mercy. That's the advice. Don't get caught up in sunk costs. Daniel Kahneman's philosophy was, I have no sunk costs.
cut your losses on old goals quickly.
Yes. The faster you let go of goals that no longer fit who you are, the sooner you can redirect your resources and get back to compounding towards what your current self values.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground on the psychology of money. Let's try to bring this all together. What are the key, actionable pieces of wisdom for you, the listener, to take away from this deep dive?
All right, let's summarize. First, humility and forgiveness. Acknowledge luck and risk in your own life and in others. Things are rarely as good or as bad as they seem on the surface.
Second, less ego, more wealth. Remember, wealth is often the gap between your ego and your income. Taming today's desire for status buys tomorrow's freedom and options.
Third, be okay with things going wrong. Remember the tails concept. Most returns come from a few winners. Don't sweat individual investments. Focus on your overall portfolio's performance over time.
Fourth, use money to gain control over your time. That's arguably its greatest benefit. Doing what you want, when you want, with who you want. That's priceless.
Fifth, be nicer, less flashy. Kindness and empathy earn more respect than possessions ever will. Remember the man in the car paradox, people admire the car, not necessarily you.
Sixth, save without a specific goal. Just save. Build that buffer. It's your best defense against life's inevitable, unpredictable surprises.
Seventh, define the price of success and be willing to pay it. Volatility, fear, doubt, these aren't fines for mistakes. They're the fees you pay for the chance at long-term market growth. Accept them.
Eighth, worship room for error. Margin of safety equals endurance. Endurance lets compounding work. Build buffer into your plans. Be unbreakable.
Ninth, avoid extremes in your financial life. Your goals will change. Balance increases the odds you'll stick with your plan long enough for it to succeed and minimizes future regret.
10th, like risk, but absolutely fear ruin. Take calculated risks that have upside potential, but avoid any risk, no matter how tempting the reward, that could wipe you out completely. Staying in the game is everything.
11th, define the game you are playing. Don't get distracted or influenced by people playing different games with different time horizons or goals, like day traders if you're a long-term investor.
And finally, 12th, respect the mess. There's no single right answer that works for everyone. Find what works for you and your family, what feels reasonable, what lets you sleep peacefully at night.
And that really ties into the author's personal philosophy shared in the sources. The ultimate goal isn't just getting rich, it's achieving independence.
Doing work you like, with people you like.
At the times you want, for as long as you want. And achieving that might mean making choices that look irrational on a spreadsheet, like paying off a mortgage early for peace of mind or holding more cash than models suggest.
Because you're optimizing for happiness, not just returns.
Exactly. You're optimizing for what lets you sleep well.
So perhaps the final thought for you to consider is this. In a world where, as we've discussed, no one is crazy and everyone's financial decisions make sense through their own unique lens, maybe true mastery isn't about finding the single right answer. Maybe it's about finding the approach that allows you to live happily and sleep soundly. How might embracing your own reasonable approach, rather than constantly chasing some external idea of perfect rationality, actually transform your financial future and your overall happiness?
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Wired to Win. If there's one thing I hope you take with you, it's this. Real wealth isn't always what you see. It's often what you don't see. It's peace of mind. It's freedom. It's the quiet power of patience and intentional choices. Money doesn't have to control you. When you understand your psychology, you can start making decisions that serve your future, not your fears. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us, subscribe, and let us know what your thoughts are on this episode. We'd love to hear from you. And make sure to watch out for the next one, where we'll dive into another powerful topic to help you improve your life, bit by bit, so you can keep becoming the best version of yourself. Until then, stay thoughtful, stay bold, and always stay wired to win.